Elizabeth Harmon's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the scope on her rifle, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp mountain air. 3,000 meters away, a high-value target moved between buildings in the compound below. She had one shot, one chance to prove that the last 7 years of her life hadn't been wasted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Breathe, Lizzie, she whispered to herself, remembering the words her mentor had drilled into her for countless hours. Slow inhale, gentle exhale, pause, then squeeze. The crosshairs settled on her target as the wind momentarily died down. Her finger caressed the trigger, finding that perfect pressure point just before release. The world narrowed to a single focal point as time seemed to slow. When the shot finally broke the silence, it traveled across the valley with deadly precision, a testament to years of secret training that no one in her unit knew about. The radio crackled to life seconds later. Target neutralized. Confirmed kill. The disbelief in her commander's voice was palpable. Who took that shot? Elizabeth lowered her rifle, a strange mix of pride and apprehension washing over her. 7 years of hiding her true capabilities, 7 years of being dismissed as just a communications specialist, had culminated in this moment. She keyed her radio. "Harmon, sir." "I took the shot." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Elizabeth Harmon had joined the 75th Tactical Support Battalion at 24, fresh-faced and eager. With exceptional marks in basic training that should have earned her consideration for specialized combat roles. Instead, she found herself relegated to communications and logistics, her requests for advanced training consistently denied or misplaced in the system. "We need good support staff, Harmon," Captain Richards would say, the dismissal in his tone barely concealed. "Not everyone is built for combat operations. Know your place." Her place. As if her gender and slender build had predetermined her role more than her abilities or determination ever could. Elizabeth accepted the assignments she was given, performing them with meticulous precision that earned her grudging respect. But while her colleagues saw a dedicated communications specialist, they never noticed how she observed the combat operators, studied their movements, and mentally cataloged their tactics. They didn't see her slipping away during off hours to the abandoned range at the far edge of the base, where the tall, imposing figure of retired Master Sergeant James Keller would be waiting. They didn't know that one of the most decorated snipers in military history had taken a personal interest in her potential after witnessing her natural talent during a routine qualification. "You have the eye, Harmon," Keller had told her that first day, his weathered face serious under the brim of his worn cap. "And more importantly, you have the patience. 99% of being a successful sniper isn't about pulling the trigger, it's about waiting for the perfect moment to do so." Elizabeth remembered that first lesson clearly as she had arrived at their meeting spot, a small clearing beyond the disused firing range that had been neglected after budget cuts. Keller was already there, his imposing figure silhouetted against the setting sun, a custom rifle case at his feet. "Most people think snipers are just good shots," he began without preamble. "They're wrong. A true sniper is a mathematician, a meteorologist, a physicist, and a ghost all rolled into one." "Why help me?" she had asked, suspicious of his motives. "You don't even know me." Keller's eyes, sharp despite his 62 years, had studied her face. 27 years ago, someone told me I didn't have what it takes. That I was too jittery, too impulsive for precision work. He unlatched the rifle case, revealing a meticulously maintained weapon. "I had one commander who saw something different. He gave me a chance when no one else would. I'm just passing that forward." Their training began that evening and continued 3 times a week for 7 years. Dawn sessions before her shift. Midnight lessons after everyone else had retired to their quarters. Weekend excursions disguised as hiking trips where they would practice extreme, long-distance shots in varying weather conditions. Everything affects the bullet, Keller would remind her. Wind, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, the Earth's rotation. You must account for all of it. Elizabeth absorbed every lesson, practiced every technique, and developed a nearly supernatural ability to read environmental conditions. Meanwhile, at her regular duties, she maintained a careful facade of competence without excellence, good enough to avoid negative attention, but never so exceptional that anyone might question her capabilities beyond communications. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Captain Richards and his executive officer, Lieutenant Wilson, barely acknowledged her beyond issuing orders and occasional, backhanded compliments about how she managed pretty well for support personnel. Their dismissal stung, but Elizabeth used it as fuel, channeling her frustration into her secret training. "They're doing you a favor," Keller told her during one particularly intense session after she'd vented about being passed over for a tactical communications role that went to a less qualified male colleague. "When no one's watching you, you're free to become exceptional on your own terms." Elizabeth mastered not just marksmanship, but fieldcraft, camouflage, stealth movement, and the psychological discipline necessary for a sniper. Keller taught her to control her breathing until her heartbeat barely registered, to remain motionless for hours despite cramping muscles and numbing cold, to calculate complex ballistic trajectories in her head. "A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle," he'd say. "It's patience. The willingness to wait for the perfect moment when everything aligns." By the 5th year of her secret training, Elizabeth could consistently hit targets at distances that would impress even the most elite marksman in the military. Her natural talent, honed by Keller's exacting standards, had developed into genuine expertise that few could match. "You're ready," Keller told her one evening as they cleaned their weapons after a particularly successful training session. "You've surpassed what I can teach you." "Ready for what?" Elizabeth asked. "No one's going to let me demonstrate these skills. I've requested sniper school 3 times. Each application mysteriously disappeared." Keller's weathered face creased into a rare smile. "The opportunity will come, Harmon. And when it does, you'll need to seize it without hesitation. One shot is all you'll get to change their perception. Make it count." She didn't know then how prophetic his words would prove to be. The opportunity arrived during a joint operation to eliminate a high-value target who had been orchestrating attacks on military installations across the region. Intelligence had tracked him to a compound in a remote valley, but the location presented significant challenges for conventional approaches. The compound was surrounded by open terrain that made covert infiltration nearly impossible, and the target had a history of escaping at the first sign of an operation. Elizabeth was assigned to the communication center, coordinating between ground teams and command. She listened intently as Captain Richards outlined the planned assault, immediately recognizing the flaws in the approach. The target would spot the incoming teams long before they could establish an effective position. "Sir," she ventured during a brief pause in the briefing, "satellite imagery shows a ridgeline 3 kilometers east of the compound." "A skilled marksman could stick to comms, Harmon." Richards cut her off without even looking in her direction. "Leave tactical assessments to those qualified to make them." Lieutenant Wilson smirked, exchanging a knowing glance with Richards. "Besides, we don't have anyone who could make that shot. 3,000 meters in variable mountain winds? That's beyond even our designated marksmen." Elizabeth bit her tongue, focusing on her assigned role as the operation moved forward. As predicted, the assault team was spotted during their approach. The target was already moving toward his escape route, minutes away from disappearing once again. In the chaos of the moment, with communication channels buzzing with urgent updates and revised orders, Elizabeth made her decision. She slipped away from her station, grabbing her pack which always contained essential gear, a habit Keller had instilled in her, and headed for the motor pool. Staff Sergeant Miller was there, preparing additional vehicles for potential deployment. "Harmon, what are you doing here?" "Emergency redeployment of backup communication equipment," she replied smoothly, using the cover story she'd prepared for just such an opportunity. "The main array is experiencing interference. Captain Richards wants me to establish a secondary relay on the eastern ridge." Miller nodded, distracted by his own tasks. "Take the light recon vehicle. No one else has requisitioned it." 20 minutes later, Elizabeth was speeding toward the eastern ridgeline, her heart pounding not with fear but with a strange calm certainty. In her pack was a disassembled precision rifle that Keller had given her, for when the moment comes. He'd set along with the essential tools for a sniper's work: rangefinder, wind meter, ballistic calculator. She reached the ridgeline with barely enough time. The target was visible through her scope, moving between buildings as a security detail prepared for immediate evacuation. The shot was nearly impossible, 3,200 meters, with swirling mountain winds and a 15-degree temperature gradient between her position and the target. Elizabeth ran through Keller's mental checklist: distance, wind speed and direction, temperature, humidity, bullet drop, Coriolis effect. She made the calculations, adjusted her scope, and settled into position, becoming one with the earth beneath her. Her breathing slowed as she tracked the target through her scope, waiting for that perfect alignment of conditions. When she finally took the shot, it felt almost anticlimactic. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, the report echoing across the valley. Through her scope, she watched as the target dropped, a clean hit at an almost impossible distance. The radio chatter exploded with confusion and disbelief. The shot had come from nowhere, eliminating the target when the entire operation seemed on the verge of failure. Elizabeth keyed her radio. "Target neutralized. Position secure." "Who is this?" Captain Richards demanded. "Identify yourself immediately." Elizabeth took a deep breath. This was the moment Keller had prepared her for. "Specialist Harmon, sir." "Communication section." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by Lieutenant Wilson's incredulous voice. "Bullshit. Harmon's a comms specialist. She couldn't make that shot." "Check the GPS tracker on my vehicle, sir," Elizabeth replied calmly. "I'm at the eastern ridgeline, 3.2 kilometers from the target location. I can provide ballistic details if you require verification." The confusion and disbelief that followed her transmission was almost worth the years of dismissal and underestimation. Almost. By the time Elizabeth returned to base, the story of the impossible shot had spread like wildfire. Captain Richards was waiting at the motor pool, his face an unreadable mask as she parked the vehicle and stepped out, her rifle case slung over her shoulder. "Specialist Harmon," he said, his voice tight. "My office now." The walk across the base was surreal. Personnel stopped what they were doing to stare at her, conversations dying as she passed. The communications specialist who had just made one of the most remarkable sniper shots in recent military history. Richards closed the door to his office with deliberate care. "Explain yourself, Harmon. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Who authorized you to leave your post? Who gave you that weapon?" Elizabeth stood at attention, her expression neutral despite the turmoil of emotions beneath. "Sir, I've been studying advanced marksmanship for 7 years, under the guidance of Master Sergeant James Keller, retired. The weapon is personally owned, properly registered, and maintained to military specifications." "Keller? The ghost?" Richard's expression shifted from anger to confusion. James "the Ghost" Keller was legendary in special operations circles. James "the Ghost" Keller was legendary in special operations circles. as legendary in special operations circles, sniper with confirmed kills at ranges that defied conventional wisdom. Yes, sir. Master Sergeant Keller has been training me since my 3rd month at this installation. Why wasn't I informed of this training? Elizabeth met his gaze without flinching. With respect, sir, every request I submitted for advanced tactical training was denied or lost in processing. Master Sergeant Keller offered an alternative path to developing skills that I believed would eventually benefit our unit. Richards leaned back in his chair, studying her with new eyes. Do you understand what you did today? The protocols you violated? The chain of command you circumvented? Yes, sir. I also understand that the primary objective was accomplished when conventional approaches had failed. The high-value target has been eliminated, with no casualties to our personnel. A knock at the door interrupted them. Colonel Jameson, the battalion commander, entered without waiting for a response. His presence in Richard's office was unprecedented. Specialist Harmon, he said, nodding to her before turning to Richards. Captain, I've just finished a call with Central Command. They're quite interested in the shot that saved today's operation. Richards cleared his throat. Sir, I was just discussing with Specialist Harmon the protocol she violated by eliminating a target that has evaded our best efforts for 18 months. Jameson interrupted, his eyebrow raised. A shot at a distance that most of our designated marksmen wouldn't even attempt? Sir, there are procedures. There are results, Captain, Jameson cut in again. And today's results speak volumes. He turned to Elizabeth. Central Command has questions. Specifically, how a communications specialist developed the skills to make one of the most remarkable shots they've seen in this theater. Elizabeth straightened her posture. Sir, I've been privately training with Master Sergeant James Keller for the past 7 years. Jameson's eyes widened slightly. Keller? He's been off the grid since his retirement. He prefers it that way, sir. A faint smile touched Jameson's lips. I imagine he does. He considered her for a moment. Command wants you at headquarters tomorrow morning, 800. It seems you've caught the attention of some people who specialize in recognizing unconventional talent. After they left Richard's office, Elizabeth found herself in a daze, the reality of what had just happened finally sinking in. 7 years of secret training, of being dismissed and underestimated, had culminated in a single moment that had changed everything. One perfect shot that revealed the truth she had kept hidden for so long. She made her way to her quarters, aware of the whispers and stares that followed her. The same people who had barely acknowledged her existence now looked at her with a mixture of awe and confusion, trying to reconcile the quiet communications specialist with the precision shooter who had made an impossible shot. As she packed her essentials for the next day's meeting, her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Keller, brief and to the point. Well done. The first shot reveals the sniper. The second confirms the legend. Your journey begins now. Elizabeth smiled, tucking the phone away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and likely a complete redirection of her military career. But tonight, she savored the simple satisfaction of finally being seen for who she truly was and what she was capable of. Not as she had been labeled, but as she had made herself to be through years of dedicated, patient work in the shadows. One perfect shot had revealed the truth. And sometimes, that was all it took to change everything. Elizabeth sat in the sterile waiting room of Central Command headquarters, the weight of anticipation heavy in her stomach. The polished floor reflected the overhead lights, making the space seem even more clinical. 20 hours had passed since that fateful shot, the one that had changed everything. Colonel Patricia Davis entered, her uniform immaculate, her posture perfect. Specialist Harmon, she said, extending her hand. Follow me. They walked down a corridor where framed photographs of special operations teams lined the walls. Elizabeth noticed that very few women appeared in these images. You're probably wondering why you're here, Davis said, punching a code into a secure door. That shot you made? It's got people talking. The room they entered contained a large conference table where 3 senior officers waited. Their expressions revealed nothing as Elizabeth stood at attention. "At ease, Specialist," said General Harrison, the most senior among them. "We've reviewed the report of yesterday's operation. 3,200 meters. Variable mountain winds. First shot success on a high-priority target." He leaned forward. "Care to explain how a communications specialist makes that shot when our designated marksman considered it beyond their capabilities?" Elizabeth took a measured breath. "Sir, I've been training privately with Master Sergeant James Keller for the past 7 years. He saw potential in me that others overlooked." "Keller," repeated a silver-haired woman Elizabeth recognized as Colonel Morgan, head of Special Operations Training. "The ghost himself took you under his wing?" "Why?" "He said I had the eye, ma'am." "And the patience." General Harrison exchanged glances with his colleagues. "And your commanding officer was unaware of this training?" "I submitted 3 formal requests for sniper school and advanced marksmanship training, sir. All were denied or lost in processing." "So you found an alternative path," the 3rd officer observed, his nameplate identifying him as Colonel Winters. "Yes, sir." "Unconventional, but effective," Harrison noted. "We've contacted Keller. He confirms your account and speaks very highly of your abilities." He slid a folder across the table. "He says you're one of the most naturally gifted snipers he's ever encountered." Elizabeth felt a surge of pride at Keller's assessment, but maintained her composure. "Specialist Harmon, we're offering you a choice," Harrison continued. "Option 1, formal sniper school, followed by reassignment to a designated marksman position within conventional forces." He paused. "Option 2 is more specialized." Colonel Morgan took over. "We have a program for exceptional candidates with unconventional backgrounds. It operates outside standard military structure, handling sensitive operations that require unique skill sets. Given your demonstrated abilities and Keller's endorsement, you qualify for consideration." Elizabeth's heart raced. This was beyond anything she had imagined possible just days ago. "The program is classified at the highest levels," Colonel Winters added. "If you choose this path, your service record becomes compartmentalized. To the regular military and the outside world, you remain Specialist Harmon, Communications Section. Only those with appropriate clearance would know your true role." "Why the secrecy, sir?" Elizabeth asked. "Because sometimes the most effective operators are the ones nobody suspects," Harrison replied. "Your background in communications actually makes you more valuable to us. You understand signals intelligence, encryption protocols, operational security from the technical side. Combined with your marksmanship skills, that creates a rare and valuable skill set. You wouldn't be the first person we've recruited from unconventional backgrounds," Morgan added. "Some of our best operators came from support roles. People underestimated them, overlooked them, just as they did with you." Elizabeth thought about Keller's words over the years, how he had prepared her not just in marksmanship but in mindset, teaching her that being underestimated could be a tactical advantage. "The training would be intense," Winters warned. "More demanding than anything you've experienced, even with Keller. Not everyone completes the program." "How long do I have to decide?" Elizabeth asked. "Now," Harrison said simply. "This opportunity vanishes the moment you leave this room." "Security protocols." Elizabeth didn't hesitate. "Option 2, sir. The specialized program." Harrison nodded, unsurprised. "Report to Hangar 7 at 0500 tomorrow. Bring only essential personal items. Everything else will be provided." He stood, signaling the meeting's end. "One last thing, Specialist. When you see Keller again, thank him for us. His judgment in personnel matters has always been exceptional. The next morning arrived with a pink-orange sunrise that painted the mountains in soft hues that belied the intensity of what awaited her. Elizabeth approached Hangar 7 with her small duffel bag, containing little more than basic toiletries, a worn paperback, and a photo of her late parents. A nondescript black SUV waited outside the hangar. The driver, a stern-faced woman in civilian clothes, checked Elizabeth's ID before gesturing for her to get in. No words were exchanged as they drove off base and headed into the mountains. After nearly 3 hours on increasingly remote roads, they arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned mining facility. Security measures were subtle but evident to Elizabeth's trained eye: concealed cameras, disguised motion sensors, and what looked like regular maintenance buildings that were too perfectly positioned for defensive coverage. "Echo facility," the driver said, breaking her silence as they passed through a reinforced gate. "Home for the next 6 months, if you make it through selection." Inside, the facility revealed its true nature. Beyond the weathered exterior lay state-of-the-art training facilities, advanced technology, and the unmistakable atmosphere of elite operations. Elizabeth was led to a Spartan dormitory where 5 other candidates waited, their expressions ranging from confident to apprehensive. "Final candidate arrived," announced a compact, muscular woman who entered behind Elizabeth. "I'm Major Levine, head of selection and training. Welcome to Ghost Protocol." The name sent a chill through Elizabeth, a clear reference to Pizdue, Keller's nickname and a sign of his influence on this secretive program. "Each of you was selected for exceptional abilities demonstrated outside conventional pathways," Levine continued. "You've all been underestimated, overlooked, or underutilized in your previous assignments. That ends today." She paced the room, studying each candidate. "For the next 6 months, you don't exist. Your previous identities, ranks, and specialties are irrelevant here. What matters is what you can do and how well you can do it under the most extreme conditions imaginable." Elizabeth took in her fellow candidates, 2 men and 3 women, all with the hyper-awareness that marked experienced operators. They came from different backgrounds, evident in their bearing and the way they assessed the room, but shared the same intensity of purpose. "Selection begins in 30 minutes, Levine announced. "Prepare yourselves." What followed was the most grueling 6 weeks of Elizabeth's life. The training made her sessions with Keller seem like casual practice by comparison. They were pushed to physical and mental breaking points daily, tested not just on marksmanship, but on every aspect of clandestine operations: infiltration, exfiltration, intelligence gathering, counterintelligence, survival in hostile environments, resistance to interrogation techniques. 2 candidates washed out in the first week. Another left after the 3rd week when the psychological evaluation portion broke through his carefully constructed facade of confidence. Elizabeth endured, drawing on the foundation Keller had built and discovering reserves of strength and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. Her background in communications proved unexpectedly valuable during complex scenarios involving signals intelligence and electronic warfare. By week 5, only Elizabeth and 2 others remained: Ramirez, a former logistics officer with exceptional analytical skills, and Chun, who had been a linguistics specialist before revealing unprecedented talent in close-quarters combat. "You're not competing against each other," Major Levine told the 3 survivors one evening. "You're competing against our standards. We don't fill quotas here. If all of you meet the standard, all of you continue to specialized training." The final test came without warning in the 6th week. Elizabeth was awakened at 0200 hours and transported, blindfolded, to an unknown location. When the blindfold was removed, she found herself alone in dense forest with minimal equipment: a compass, a knife, a canteen, and a sealed envelope. The instructions inside were simple: reach the extraction point 50 kilometers away within 72 hours while evading hunter teams actively searching for her. She would need to complete 3 objectives along the way, the details of which would be found at specific coordinates. The first day tested her fieldcraft and navigation skills as she moved silently through unfamiliar terrain, careful to leave no trail. She reached the first objective by nightfall, a camouflaged cache containing a disassembled sniper rifle with the message, "Tool for Objective 2." The second day brought clarity when she reached the specified coordinates and found a high observation point overlooking the mock enemy compound. Through her scope, she observed training personnel posing as hostiles, one wearing a red bandana that identified the target. Elizabeth settled in, analyzing the wind, distance, and environmental factors. The shot was challenging, but within her capabilities. She assembled the rifle, made her calculations, and eliminated the target with a single round before disappearing back into the forest, leaving no evidence of her position. The third objective proved to be the most challenging. At the designated coordinates, she found not instructions, but an apparent ambush, 3 operators closing in on her position. With no time to retreat, Elizabeth made a split-second decision. Using distraction techniques, Keller had taught her to create confusion before neutralizing each threat with non-lethal takedowns. The last of these attackers was Major Levine herself, who smiled with approval as Elizabeth secured her in a textbook restraint hold. "Objective 3 complete," Levine announced. "Extraction point is 2 kilometers northwest." "Well done, Harmon." At the extraction point, Elizabeth found Ramirez and Chun already waiting, each having completed their own variations of the final test. The exhaustion on their faces mirrored what she felt, but there was also the unmistakable satisfaction of having overcome every obstacle placed in their path. Major Levine arrived by helicopter an hour later. "Congratulations to all of you," she said as they boarded. "Ghost protocol selection complete. Specialized training begins tomorrow." The specialized training phase transformed them from exceptional individuals into something more, an elite team with complementary skills and an almost supernatural ability to anticipate each other's actions. Elizabeth's marksmanship was honed to levels that surpassed even what Keller had taught her, augmented now by advanced technology and techniques available only to the most classified programs. She learned to operate the most sophisticated sniper systems in existence, some still in experimental phases. More importantly, she learned to integrate her skills with those of her teammates, creating operational capabilities that none of them could achieve individually. 4 months into the program, a familiar face appeared during a training exercise. Master Sergeant James Keller himself, now revealed as one of the program's founding members and occasional instructors. "I knew you'd find your way here eventually," he told Elizabeth during a rare break in training. "From the first day I saw you on that firing range, I knew you belonged in Ghost Protocol." "You could have told me this was the destination," Elizabeth said, a hint of accusation in her tone. Keller shook his head. "You had to find your own path here. If I'd handed you this opportunity, you might have doubted whether you truly earned it." He looked at her with unmistakable pride. "Besides, the journey shaped you in ways a direct appointment never could. Those years of being dismissed, underestimated, were painful but necessary," Keller finished. "They taught you patience, resilience, and how to operate in plain sight without revealing your true capabilities, all essential skills for what you'll be doing now." Elizabeth thought about Captain Richards and the others who had relegated her to communications duty, never seeing her potential. "Were you watching me the whole time? Was this all some elaborate test?" "Not at first," Keller admitted. "When I started training you, I simply saw talent going to waste. The connection to Ghost Protocol came later, after I realized just how exceptional you could become." He smiled. "Some people are born for this work, Elizabeth. You're one of them." The next day, she was called into a secure briefing room where Colonel Morgan waited with a classified file. "Your first mission," Morgan said without preamble. "This isn't a training exercise. It's a live operation with real consequences. Elizabeth opened the file to find details on a high-level arms dealer operating in a conflict zone halfway across the world. The mission required eliminating the target during a rare public appearance under extraordinarily difficult conditions. "Why me for the first deployment?" Elizabeth asked. "Because you've demonstrated something beyond technical proficiency," Morgan replied. "You've shown judgment, knowing not just how to take the shot, but when to take it and, more importantly, when not to. This operation requires that discernment." 3 days later, Elizabeth was positioned on a rooftop 1,800 meters from where the target was expected to appear. Ramirez provided remote intelligence support, while Chun secured their exfiltration route. The operation was textbook in its execution. One shot, confirmed elimination, clean extraction with no evidence left behind. When they returned to Echo Facility, Major Levine met them with news that would further transform Elizabeth's career. "The success of this operation has accelerated our timeline," she announced. "Ghost Protocol is expanding its operational parameters. We're establishing specialized teams focusing on different operational spheres." She turned to Elizabeth. "Harmon, you're being assigned as team leader for Phantom Cell, a new unit specializing in high-risk, long-range precision operations in denied territories." Elizabeth stared in disbelief. "Team leader? I've only completed one mission. You've demonstrated the qualities we need: technical excellence, tactical creativity, and the ability to make correct decisions under extreme pressure." Levine handed her a folder. "You'll select your team members from this pool of candidates, all exceptional in complementary specialties." That evening, Elizabeth found a moment alone on the facility's observation deck, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold. The weight of her new responsibility settled on her. Shoulders not a burden but a mantle she had, earned through years of patient work and one perfect shot that had revealed her true capabilities to a world that had underestimated her. Her phone vibrated with a message from Keller. "Leadership was always your destination, not just marksmanship. The true test begins now." Elizabeth smiled, tucking the phone away as she turned to watch the training exercises continuing on the grounds below. Tomorrow she would begin building Phantom Cell into an elite unit. Today, she allowed herself a moment to appreciate how far she had come from the dismissed communications specialist who had trained in secret, waiting patiently for her moment to emerge from the shadows. The true journey, as Keller suggested, was just beginning. But now she would face it not as someone fighting to be seen, but as someone who had proven beyond doubt exactly what she was capable of achieving. The formation of Phantom Cell began with a seemingly impossible task: choose 5 operators from a pool of 50 exceptional candidates, each with unique specializations and backgrounds. Elizabeth spent 3 days reviewing files, conducting interviews, and running practical assessments before making her final selections. "Your team is unconventional," Major Levine observed as Elizabeth presented her choices. "That's the point," Elizabeth replied. "Conventional thinking is what relegated me to communications duty for 7 years." Her team reflected this philosophy. Marcus Ramirez, already her colleague through selection, brought analytical skills that bordered on precognitive, able to predict target behavior patterns with uncanny accuracy. Sophia Chun, equally familiar, added close-quarters expertise and linguistic proficiency in 7 languages. The newcomers were even more unusual. Dr. David Harper had been an environmental physicist before joining Special Operations, bringing unprecedented understanding of ballistics under extreme conditions. Nadia Petrov, former Olympic biathlete turned military intelligence specialist, contributed stealth movement techniques that seemed to defy physical laws. And rounding out the team was James Wilson, whose background in theater had made him the military's premier expert in disguise and deception operations. "None of them fit the traditional operator profile," Elizabeth explained. That's exactly why they'll succeed where conventional teams can't. Levine nodded slowly. Ghost Protocol was founded on similar thinking. Prove us right. The team assembled for the first time in a secluded training facility deep in the mountains. Elizabeth stood before them, acutely aware that while she held operational leadership, each person before her possessed specialized knowledge that exceeded her own. Traditional military hierarchy won't work for what we're doing, she began. We operate on expertise-based authority. When we're in Harper's environmental domain, he leads. When we're in Petrov's stealth infiltration phase, she calls the shots. My role is integration and final decisions when consensus can't be reached. The approach was radical by military standards, but resonated with these operators, who had all experienced the limitations of rigid command structures. Why were we selected? Wilson asked, his theater background evident in his precise diction. Beyond our individual skills. Because each of you knows what it means to be underestimated, Elizabeth answered. To have others define your limitations instead of recognizing your potential. That shared experience is as valuable as any technical skill. Their first 3 months focused on developing operational cohesion, transforming 5 distinct specialists into a seamless unit, capable of executing missions that conventional teams wouldn't even attempt. They created new protocols, invented techniques that combined their diverse backgrounds, and established communication systems that required minimal verbal exchange. Their breakthrough came during a training exercise designed to be unwinnable. The scenario involved eliminating a target surrounded by innocents, with no clear shot possible from any established position. Instead of accepting the parameters, Phantom Cell redefined them. Harper calculated how a bullet could ricochet off a specific surface at a precise angle to reach the target without endangering civilians. Elizabeth executed the impossible shot, striking a metal conduit that redirected the round perfectly to the target. The evaluation team was stunned into silence. That's what makes Phantom Cell different, Elizabeth told them afterward. We don't accept impossible. We redefine possible. Their first actual mission came 6 weeks later. A terrorist bomb maker responsible for hundreds of civilian casualties had surfaced in a crowded, urban environment where conventional approaches were deemed too risky. Phantom Cell will handle this, Colonel Morgan informed them. The target's location makes this a no-fail scenario. Collateral damage is unacceptable. So is failure. The team deployed to a coastal city half a world away, establishing their operations center in an abandoned lighthouse overlooking the crowded harbor where the target had been spotted. Standard approach won't work, Elizabeth assessed as they studied the environment. Too many variables, too many innocents. We create an opportunity rather than wait for one, Petrov suggested. Wilson nodded. We control the environment instead of adapting to it. What followed was a masterclass in manipulative operations. Wilson infiltrated the target circle using a cover identity so convincing that not even their advanced facial recognition technology could detect the disguise. Ramirez analyzed behavioral patterns to predict where the target would be most vulnerable. Chung created a diversion that would isolate the target at a specific time and place. When the moment came, Elizabeth was positioned on a cargo ship 1,500 meters from where the operation converged. The shot required compensating for movement on both ends, her position on the gently rocking vessel and the target's walking pace. Harper's calculations incorporated wind patterns between towering buildings, temperature differentials from sun-heated surfaces, and even the subtle curvature effect from the Earth's rotation at their latitude. Elizabeth squeezed the trigger at precisely the calculated moment. Through her scope, she watched the target drop instantly, a perfect shot that appeared to witnesses as though the man had simply collapsed from natural causes. The extraction was equally flawless, with team members disappearing into the crowd and regrouping at predetermined points, before leaving the country through separate routes. their identities and connection to the operation undetected. "Phenomenal work," Colonel Morgan told them during debriefing. "This operation has set a new standard for precision elimination without attribution. Phantom Cell is officially classified as fully operational." Over the next year, they completed 16 high-risk missions across 12 countries, developing a reputation within the classified community as the team that could accomplish the impossible. Their approach fundamentally changed how certain operations were conceived, shifting from force-based solutions to precision interventions that often left no evidence of outside involvement. Despite their success, Elizabeth found leadership more challenging than she had anticipated. The weight of decision-making, knowing that lives hung in the balance with every call, created a pressure that technical excellence hadn't prepared her for. After a particularly difficult operation in Eastern Europe, where changing circumstances had forced her to make a controversial call that succeeded but endangered the team, Elizabeth sought out Keller. He had transitioned to a senior advisory role within Ghost Protocol, his operational experience now directed toward mentoring the next generation. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this," she confessed as they sat in his sparse office. "Technical skills are clear. You either make the shot or you don't. But leadership? The variables are infinite, and the consequences." Keller listened patiently, his weathered face showing neither judgment nor surprise. "You're experiencing the leader's burden," he finally said. "The realization that perfection is impossible, but excellence is still required. How do you handle making decisions when any choice could get your people killed?" "By understanding that indecision kills more effectively than imperfect decisions," Keller replied. "Your team trusts you not because they expect perfection, but because they've seen your commitment to the mission and to them." He leaned forward. "The best leaders I've known share one quality. They doubt themselves enough to seek improvement, but trust themselves enough to act decisively when required." Elizabeth considered his words. "I never wanted to lead. I just wanted to prove I could make the shot." "Few great leaders start with leadership ambitions," Keller said with a slight smile. "The best are often those who step up because no one else can do what needs to be done." 2 days later, Phantom Cell received their most challenging assignment yet. A rogue intelligence operative had gone dark with classified technologies and was attempting to sell them to the highest bidder. The operative, code-named Viper, had been Keller's protege before Elizabeth, and possessed many of the same skills she did. "This is personal for me," Keller admitted during the briefing. "I trained him, just as I trained you. I missed something in his character that should have been obvious." "You're not responsible for his choices," Elizabeth said. "Perhaps not. But I am responsible for stopping him." Keller's expression was grim. "He knows all our standard protocols, all our techniques. He's familiar with Ghost Protocol's operational patterns. This will be unlike any mission you've faced." The operation took them to a remote mountain range where intelligence suggested Viper was meeting potential buyers. The environment was brutally hostile, sub-zero temperatures, unpredictable weather patterns, and terrain that offered both concealment and deadly hazards. "He'll expect a sniper approach," Elizabeth told her team during planning. "He knows that's our primary methodology." "Then we change the game," Ramirez suggested. They developed a strategy that inverted their usual approach. Instead of Elizabeth establishing a distant position for a precision shot, she would be the one to make close contact, using her unexpected appearance to create momentary advantage. The rest of the team would establish multiple fallback positions, providing overlapping coverage if the primary approach failed. "It's high risk," Chun observed. "If he recognizes you." "He's expecting a ghost in the distance," Elizabeth replied. "Not a shadow at his side." The operation launched during a snowstorm that would have grounded conventional teams. Phantom Cell used the extreme conditions to their advantage, with Harper's environmental calculations, creating a detailed model of how the storm would progress and where visibility would be briefly possible. Elizabeth infiltrated the target area alone, moving through whiteout conditions that concealed her approach but made navigation nearly impossible without the specialized equipment Harper had developed. The cold was brutal, seeping through even their advanced cold weather gear, requiring constant movement to prevent hypothermia. She located Viper's position, a seemingly abandoned mountain lodge that had been converted into a defensible position with clear lines of sight in all directions. Under normal conditions, approaching unseen would be impossible. In the storm, with Harper's weather model guiding her movements, Elizabeth found the brief windows where visibility dropped to near zero. The interior of the lodge was warm, the contrast almost painful after hours in the freezing storm. Elizabeth moved silently through the shadows, locating Viper in what had once been the main gathering room, now transformed into an improvised command center. He was alone, analyzing data on multiple screens, the buyers apparently delayed by the same storm that had facilitated her approach. Elizabeth stepped into the light, her weapon trained on him. "Hello, Michael." Viper turned slowly, his expression shifting from shock to a cold smile. "Elizabeth Harmon. James always said you were his finest student." He glanced at her weapon. "Though I expected a sniper shot from the ridge, not a face-to-face confrontation." "That's what you prepared for," Elizabeth replied. "So we adapted." "Did James send his protege to clean up his mistake?" Viper's tone was conversational, as though they were colleagues rather than adversaries. "How fitting. This isn't about Keller. It's about the lives at risk from what you're selling." Viper's smile never wavered. "We're not so different, you and I, both underestimated, both trained in secret, both exceptional at eliminating targets from impossible distances." He tilted his head. "The difference is that I recognize the true value of my skills. Have they told you what Ghost Protocol really does? Who ultimately benefits from your perfect shots?" "I know enough." Elizabeth kept her aim steady, recognizing his attempt to create doubt. "Do you?" Viper took a careful step to the side. "Have you asked yourself why certain targets are prioritized while others, equally dangerous, are ignored? Have you wondered about the political calculations behind your missions?" "You're stalling," Elizabeth said, though his words struck an uncomfortable chord. There had been aspects of certain operations that had raised questions she hadn't pursued. "I'm offering perspective," Viper countered. "We're tools, Elizabeth. Precisely calibrated instruments used by people with agendas we never see." Another careful step. "I decided to choose my own targets, set my own price." Elizabeth tracked his movement. "And sell technology that will cost innocent lives. Innocence is subjective in our world." His hand moved slightly toward a concealed weapon. "You know that better than most." Elizabeth recognized the moment decision became action in his eyes, the subtle shift that preceded violence. Her training took over, muscle memory responding before conscious thought. The shot was clean, center mass, instantly fatal. As Viper fell, Elizabeth noticed something clutched in his other hand, not a weapon, but a small data drive. She secured it along with the classified technology he had been preparing to sell, then signaled her team for extraction. The storm had intensified, making their planned exfiltration route impassable. Phantom Cell adapted, as they always did, finding an alternative path through the mountains that conventional wisdom would have deemed suicidal. Harper's environmental models, combined with Petrov's extreme condition movement techniques, guided them to safety against impossible odds. Back at Echo Facility, the debriefing was tense. The data drive contained information that raised uncomfortable questions about certain Ghost Protocol operations, suggesting that some missions had been influenced by political considerations rather than pure national security interests. "This complicates things," Colonel Morgan admitted when presented with the evidence. "But it doesn't invalidate the important work you've done." "It raises questions about who we're really serving," Elizabeth countered. "About whether we're being used in ways that contradict our purpose." All intelligence operations exist in gray areas, Morgan said. The alternative is paralysis. Elizabeth thought of Viper's words about being tools for unseen agendas. There's a difference between accepting necessary ambiguity and being deliberately misled about our missions. What are you proposing? Morgan asked cautiously. Transparency within security parameters, independent verification of mission objectives, and veto authority when operations violate core ethical principles. Elizabeth's tone made clear these weren't requests. Phantom Cell has proven our value. Now we're establishing our terms. It was unprecedented, an operational team demanding oversight mechanisms for their own missions. But Elizabeth had built Phantom Cell's reputation on redefining what was possible, and that extended beyond technical operations to the very structure of their work. 3 months of tense negotiations followed, with Phantom Cell refusing certain missions while continuing to perform brilliantly on others that met their ethical standards. Eventually, a new operational framework emerged, one that maintained necessary security while providing the accountability mechanisms Elizabeth had demanded. Keller found her on the training range late one evening, practicing shots she had long since mastered. "Maintaining fundamentals?" he asked, settling beside her. "Reminding myself why I do this," she replied, lowering her rifle. "When everything gets complicated, the basics still matter." Keller nodded. "What you've accomplished goes beyond marksmanship. You've changed how the entire program operates." Was Viper right? About us being tools for agendas we don't understand. Partially, Keller admitted. But that's why what you've done matters. Tools don't demand ethical frameworks. People with principles do. He looked at her with unmistakable pride. When I started training you, I thought I was creating an exceptional shooter. Instead, you've become something far more valuable, a leader who questions not just how to complete the mission, but whether the mission itself is right. Elizabeth thought about the communications specialist she had been, fighting just to be seen. Now as Phantom Cell's commander, she had the authority to ensure their extraordinary capabilities served purposes worthy of their sacrifice. "One perfect shot revealed who I could be," she said. "But it was just the beginning of the journey, wasn't it?" "Always is," Keller agreed. "The shot proves the skill. What comes after proves the character." As they walked back toward the facility, Elizabeth reflected on how far she had come from those early days of secret training. The woman who had been dismissed and underestimated had not only proven her exceptional abilities, but had transformed the very system that had once held her back. The next generation of specialists would face different challenges, but thanks to what Phantom Cell had accomplished, they would do so within a framework that valued both excellence and ethics, that recognized potential regardless of background, and that understood sometimes the most extraordinary capabilities came from those who had been overlooked by conventional wisdom. That, Elizabeth realized, was perhaps her most important shot of all, one that would echo far beyond her own career, changing trajectories for countless others who might otherwise have remained in the shadows, their true potential never realized. 5 years after that fateful shot that changed everything, Elizabeth stood at the podium of the Advanced Tactical Training Center, facing a classroom of 50 candidates selected for consideration in the now legendary Ghost Protocol program. The candidates represented a deliberate diversity, not just in gender and background, but in specialized skills, career paths, and the types of intelligence they brought to operations. "Most of you were told throughout your careers what you couldn't do," Elizabeth began, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become her trademark. "You were placed in boxes based on physical attributes, gender, or background rather than capability. Some of you accepted those limitations temporarily, while preparing in secret to shatter them when the moment came." She recognized the hunger in their eyes, the same determination that had driven her through 7 years of clandestine training with Keller. Ghost Protocol exists because exceptional talent often develops in unconventional ways, she continued. Our success comes not from following traditional pathways, but from recognizing that breakthrough capabilities sometimes emerge from unexpected places. Among the candidates, Elizabeth noticed a young communications specialist whose file had caught her attention, Rachel Torres, whose superior officers had consistently overlooked her exceptional analytical abilities and intuitive understanding of ballistic physics. She reminded Elizabeth of herself from years ago, quietly competent, systematically underestimated, patiently waiting for her opportunity. After the orientation, Torres approached her hesitantly. "Commander Harmon, may I ask you something?" Elizabeth nodded, seeing the carefully controlled hope in the younger woman's eyes. "I've been training on my own for 3 years," Torres said quietly. "My CO doesn't know. My evaluations say I'm solid but unexceptional in my assigned role. How do you maintain belief in yourself when everyone around you sees only limitations?" The question transported Elizabeth back to those years of pride-on sessions with Keller, practicing shots that her official record said she had no business attempting. "Find the right mirror," Elizabeth replied. "Most people will reflect back the limited version of you they expect to see. But occasionally, you'll find someone who reflects your potential rather than your present. Those are the mirrors worth looking into. Like Master Sergeant Keller was for you." Elizabeth smiled. "Exactly like that. And now Ghost Protocol exists to be that mirror for people like you, to recognize the exceptional capabilities that conventional systems miss." The next morning, Elizabeth found Keller in the facility's memorial garden, a quiet space honoring operatives lost in service. Now in his 70th year, he moved more slowly but retained the keen eyes and sharper mind that had made him legendary. "The new class looks promising," he said as she joined him. "Especially that communications specialist, Torres." "I've already flagged her for specialized training," Elizabeth confirmed. "Her preliminary evaluations show extraordinary potential in precision operations." "History repeating itself?" Keller asked with a slight smile. "Evolution, not repetition," Elizabeth corrected. "She won't face the barriers I did. The system has changed." "Because you changed it," Keller noted. "That's the legacy that matters most." The memorial garden offered a rare moment of tranquility before what promised to be the most significant operation of Elizabeth's career. Intelligence had uncovered a plot involving multiple high-value targets planning to converge for a summit. The gathering presented an unprecedented opportunity, but required coordination, beyond anything Ghost Protocol had previously attempted. "Phantom Cell can't handle this alone," Colonel Morgan had explained during yesterday's briefing. "The operational scope requires multiple teams working in synchronized precision." The solution was unprecedented. Elizabeth would command not just Phantom Cell, but 3 additional Ghost Protocol teams, coordinating their specialized capabilities against multiple targets in different locations, all within the same operational window. "Command transition is complete," she told Keller as they walked. "I've been promoted to Operations Director for the entire Western Division. This will be my final field operation." "How does that feel?" he asked. "Like the natural progression," Elizabeth admitted. "I've proven everything I needed to prove in the field. Now my responsibility is creating opportunities for others to do the same." Keller nodded. "The most meaningful legacy isn't what you accomplish yourself, but what you enable others to achieve." The operation, codenamed Chessboard, launched 3 days later. Elizabeth established the command center in a secure facility overlooking the coastal city where the targets would converge. 4 Ghost Protocol teams, each with unique specializations, deployed to predetermined positions. Phantom Cell, still under Elizabeth's direct operational control, would handle the most challenging elimination, a target whose security protocols and counterintelligence measures had foiled 3 previous attempts. The remaining teams would coordinate simultaneous operations against secondary targets, creating a synchronized effect that would dismantle the entire network in one coordinated stroke. Synchronization is critical, Elizabeth emphasized during the final briefing. Each element must execute precisely within their designated window. If any target realizes what's happening, the entire operation collapses. The complexity was staggering. Multiple teams, multiple targets, multiple methodologies, all requiring perfect timing across an operational theater spanning several square kilometers. Execute according to your team's specialty, Elizabeth instructed. That's why you were selected. Trust your unique approaches. As the operation commenced, Elizabeth monitored the integrated data feeds showing each team's progress. Ghost Team Alpha, specializing in covert infiltration, was inserting operators disguised as service personnel. Ghost Team Bravo, experts in electronic warfare, had established control over key surveillance systems. Ghost Team Charlie, masters of environmental manipulation, were subtly altering conditions to create opportunities for the other teams. Phantom Cell, meanwhile, prepared for the operation's most critical element, eliminating the primary target at precisely the calculated moment that would trigger maximum disorganization among the secondary targets, creating the openings the other teams needed. Elizabeth found herself in a familiar position, rifle braced against her shoulder, eye to the scope, tracking the primary target through a window 1,200 meters away. Despite her elevated command role, she had insisted on taking this shot personally. It required a level of precision that few others could guarantee, and the entire operation hinged on its perfect execution. As she prepared to fire, her communication system crackled with an urgent alert. "Command, we have a compromise at Bravo Sector. Security protocols changing. Window closing in 30 seconds. The carefully orchestrated timeline was collapsing. Elizabeth had seconds to decide. Take the shot early, potentially sacrificing optimal conditions, or risk losing the opportunity entirely as security measures activated. In that moment, her years of experience crystallized into instinctive judgment. "All teams, accelerate to Phase 3, she ordered. "Execute now." She adjusted her aim to compensate for the target's movement, calculating the new variables instantly. The shot broke clean, finding its mark with unerring accuracy despite the compromised conditions. Through her scope, Elizabeth watched the primary target fall. "Primary down," she confirmed. "All teams execute immediately." What followed was a masterclass in adaptive operations. Each Ghost Protocol team, composed of specialists selected for their ability to improvise within their expertise, adjusted to the accelerated timeline. Across the operational theater, synchronized eliminations neutralized the entire leadership network within a 3-minute window, an unprecedented achievement in targeted operations. "All targets neutralized," came the confirmation as the last team reported success. "No collateral damage. Clean extraction proceeding." Elizabeth secured her rifle, the familiar routine grounding her as she processed what they had just accomplished. The operation had succeeded not because everything went according to plan. It hadn't, but because they had built teams capable of adapting when plans inevitably faltered. The after-action review 3 days later was attended by the highest levels of command. General Harrison, now approaching retirement, summarized what many were thinking. "Operation Chessboard has redefined what we consider possible in coordinated precision operations," he stated. "Director Harmon has created not just a successful team in Phantom Cell, but an entirely new operational methodology that leverages specialized talent regardless of its source." Elizabeth accepted the commendation with characteristic composure, but her focus was already shifting to her new role. As operations director, she would be responsible for identifying and developing the next generation of exceptional operators, finding the overlooked talent, the unconventional capabilities, the potential that traditional systems might miss. 6 months later, Elizabeth found herself reviewing candidate assessments in her new office at Ghost Protocol headquarters. The program had expanded significantly, now operating multiple specialized teams across 4 continents. Its reputation within the classified community had become mythic, the place where the impossible became routine, where conventional limitations were treated as challenges rather than boundaries. Rachel Torres's file lay open on her desk. The former communications specialist had completed preliminary training with record-setting scores and precision operations. Her evaluation showed the same intuitive understanding of ballistic physics that had been Elizabeth's own natural gift. A knock at her door interrupted her review. Master Sergeant Keller entered, moving more slowly now but still carrying himself with the dignified bearing that had impressed Elizabeth during their first meeting years ago. "The assessment results for the new candidates are remarkable," Elizabeth told him, gesturing to the files. "Torres is showing potential to surpass even my technical standards." "As expected," Keller replied with a slight smile. "But I didn't come to discuss candidates." He placed a small box on her desk. "This arrived for you. From an old friend." The package contained a single rifle round and a note, the one you never had to fire. "Some battles are won without pulling the trigger. Captain Richards." Elizabeth stared at the unexpected message from her former commanding officer, the man who had once dismissed her as too weak for combat operations. After her success with Ghost Protocol became known in certain circles, Richards had reached out, acknowledging his misjudgment and expressing genuine respect for what she had accomplished. "He finally saw you clearly," Keller observed. "Too late to matter," Elizabeth replied, though without bitterness. "Is it?" Keller raised an eyebrow. "His recognition represents something important. The system that once held you back is changing, because of what you proved was possible." Elizabeth considered this. Perhaps the most meaningful victories aren't just personal vindications, but systemic transformations that create opportunities for others. "Exactly," Keller agreed. "Your legacy isn't just in the shots you took, but in the paths you opened for those who follow." Later that week, Elizabeth led a special briefing for the program's leadership, outlining her vision for Ghost Protocol's evolution under her directorship. "Our success has been built on recognizing exceptional talent, regardless of source," she began. "But we've only scratched the surface of what's possible when we deliberately seek out those who have been systematically underestimated." Her proposal was bold, expanding recruitment to actively identify candidates who had been overlooked or misclassified in conventional systems, creating specialized training programs tailored to unusual combinations of skills, and developing operational methodologies that leverage diverse thinking styles as strategic advantages. "The next generation of threats won't be defeated by conventional thinking," she concluded. "They require operators who approach problems from unexpected angles, who see possibilities where others see only limitations." The plan was approved unanimously, with General Harrison specifically noting that Elizabeth's own journey had proven the concept's validity beyond any possible doubt. That evening, Elizabeth visited the training range where a new class of candidates was completing their day's exercises. Among them was Torres, demonstrating marksmanship that had already become the talk of the instructor cadre. "A moment, Specialist Torres," Elizabeth called as the group prepared to depart. Torres approached, her expression respectful but not subservient, exactly the balanced confidence Elizabeth looked for in potential operators. "Your progress has been exceptional," Elizabeth told her. "But I'm more impressed by something that doesn't appear in the formal evaluations: your ability to adapt technical principles to unusual conditions." Torres nodded, clearly surprised by the specific observation. "I've always approached problems differently than my instructors expected. In my previous assignment, that was considered a liability. Here, it's your greatest asset," Elizabeth assured her. "Ghost Protocol exists precisely because exceptional capabilities often develop outside conventional pathways. Like your journey from communications specialist to operations director? Torres asked, then added quickly, your story has become something of a legend among those of us who've been underestimated. Elizabeth smiled. Legends tend to simplify complex realities. The truth is that my path wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about discovering what was possible when artificial limitations were removed. That's what I'm hoping to discover here, Torres admitted. Not just what I can do, but what I might become without those limitations. Then you're in exactly the right place, Elizabeth assured her. Ghost Protocol isn't just a program. It's a philosophy that recognizes potential comes in many forms. And the most extraordinary capabilities often emerge from those who've had to fight hardest to be seen. As Torres returned to her group, Elizabeth reflected on the full circle her journey had taken. From the dismissed communications specialist fighting for recognition to the operations director reshaping how talent was identified and developed across an entire program. The symmetry felt appropriate, a completion of something that had begun with that one perfect shot that revealed what had been hidden beneath years of underestimation. The next day, Elizabeth received notification that the operational framework she had developed for Ghost Protocol was being adopted across multiple special operations divisions, a transformation that would open pathways for countless specialists whose potential had previously gone unrecognized. You've created something that will outlast all of us, Keller told her when she shared the news. A system that sees people for what they can become, not just what they appear to be. Elizabeth thought about that young communications specialist from years ago, secretly training in the pre-dawn hours, patiently waiting for her moment to emerge from the shadows. That woman could never have imagined where her journey would lead, not just to personal vindication, but to transforming the very system that had once held her back. The shot that changed everything wasn't just about proving my capabilities, she reflected. It was about challenging a fundamental assumption about where exceptional talent comes from. And that, Keller said with quiet pride, is why your legacy matters far more than any operation you've led or target you've eliminated. You've changed how the entire system identifies and develops potential. Elizabeth nodded, finding profound satisfaction in this realization. Her greatest achievement wasn't measured in successful missions or precision shots, but in the opportunities now available to others like Torres, talented specialists who would no longer have to spend years fighting just to be seen. As she walked through the training facility that evening, watching the next generation of exceptional operators developing their unique capabilities, Elizabeth felt a deep sense of completion. The journey that began with one perfect shot had culminated in something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how potential was recognized, how talent was developed, and how limitations were defined not by convention, but by individual capability. The underestimated communications specialist had not only proven her own exceptional abilities, but had created a legacy that would continue opening doors long after her own career had ended, revealing the extraordinary potential that often lies hidden in those whom conventional wisdom too quickly dismisses. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.